Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're jumping straight into a really profound question that challenges how every single one of us makes our daily decisions. The central theme we're unpacking today is exactly this: which voice will you listen to? We're going to take a fascinating look at the internal tug-of-war we all face when deciding who actually gets to call the shots in our lives, and we're drawing all of this from a deep dive into the ancient text of 1 Samuel chapter 15.
So, let's start right off the bat with a piercing question. When you are faced with a choice, a tough choice, which voice truly has the final say in your life? Now, it's super easy to just think about the physical sounds we hear all day long, but what we're unpacking today isn't just about what enters your ears. It's really about what drives your final choice.
Think of your mind kind of like a massive audio mixer at a live concert. You've got multiple channels pouring in simultaneously, right? On one channel, you have God's Word or your foundational principles. On another channel, you've got the incredibly loud noise of people's expectations, their opinions, social media pressure. And then on a third channel, you have your own internal fears and your instinct for self-preservation. All of these sounds are playing at the exact same time, but here is the catch. Only one voice can control the master volume. Whoever controls that master volume completely dictates the final sound that dominates the entire room of your life.
To break this all down, we're going to move through 5 key beats today: the master volume of my heart, the king who edited the word, the sound exposing false obedience, the king who listened to people, and finally, the true king, Jesus Christ.
Okay, let's kick things off with section 1, the master volume of my heart.
Looking at the text, we quickly realize that King Saul's problem wasn't ignorance. It really wasn't. He didn't just miss the memo or misunderstand the assignment. He heard the command perfectly. The core issue was selective obedience. And as we'll see, it's a path of partial obedience that leads directly to his ultimate downfall as king. To really get this, we actually need to look at the original Hebrew word for listening, which is shema. In this ancient context, listening isn't just a biological function of your ears. It inherently means to carefully accept the word and actually adjust your actions to match it. Honestly, if your life doesn't change direction based on what you heard, well, according to this text, you haven't actually listened at all. You just heard a noise.
That brings us right to section 2, the king who edited the word.
God gave Saul a crystal-clear command to judge the Amalekites and destroy absolutely everything. But Saul didn't flat-out reject God's command because, well, that would have been way too obvious. Instead, he stepped into the highly dangerous role of an editor. He spared King Agag as a political trophy to parade around. He kept the absolute best sheep and cattle because they were financially valuable. He only destroyed what he thought was worthless and weak. So he essentially took a divine command and revised it, based purely on his own judgment of what was good and what was bad.
By doing this, he completely failed a specific test known as harem. This was a strict ancient command meant to devote the spoils of war entirely to God's judgment. But more importantly, it was a mechanism explicitly designed to restrict human greed. It was there to prevent anyone from taking personal profit out of a divine mission. Winning a massive battle and taking zero profit, that was the ultimate test of obedience. But Saul's greed, disguised as practicality, totally overrode that command.
Which makes us have to ask ourselves a pretty tough question. Are we modernly mirroring Saul? Do you say you obey the rules or obey God's word while actively editing it for your own advantage? It challenges us to consider how incredibly easy it is to just cut out the parts of the word that demand we sacrifice our comfort, our profits, or our pride, while happily keeping the parts that benefit us. Let's be real. That isn't obedience. That's just editing.
Moving into section 3, the sound exposing false obedience.
Picture this scene, because it's almost comical. The prophet Samuel arrives, and Saul confidently marches right up to him and proclaims, "I have carried out the command." But there is this massive, unavoidable irony happening. While his mouth is claiming perfect obedience, the literal sound of bleating sheep and lowing cattle right behind his back is exposing his hidden disobedience. His secret choices were literally making a noise he couldn't silence. The reality of his actions was so much louder than his religious words.
And how does he react when he's caught red-handed? Instant excuses. First, he uses the ultimate out-of-body excuse, shifting the blame entirely to his people, saying they spared the animals. Then, when that doesn't fly, he audaciously claims he kept the best livestock so he could sacrifice them to God. It's pure disobedience disguised as religious fervor. He tried to cover up his total failure to listen with a grand religious performance.
This prompts Samuel's iconic rebuke, easily one of the most famous verses in this text. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. The profound takeaway here is that God cannot be bought off or manipulated by grand performances, massive donations, or outward religious rituals if they lack genuine foundational obedience. The act of truly listening, remember that word, shama, and submitting is the absolute ultimate requirement.
Let's look at Section 4, the king who listened to people.
This wasn't just an overnight failure. We can clearly trace Saul's rapid step-by-step decline. He actually started out incredibly humble. He was literally hiding in the baggage when he was first made king. But soon he became anxious, impatiently offering a sacrifice he wasn't authorized to make. Then he got controlling, making rash vows that endangered his own son. By chapter 15, he's become arrogant enough to literally erect a monument to himself. And finally, when Samuel turns to leave, Saul becomes so desperate for human validation that he violently tears Samuel's robe.
Saul's own confession finally reveals the absolute root of the issue. I have sinned because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. The master volume of fear and public opinion was turned up so incredibly high in his mind that it completely drowned out his reverence for God. He cared way more about what the crowd thought than what the Creator commanded. He traded his divine calling for public approval.
And finally, Section 5, the true king, Jesus Christ.
Now, if we just look at Saul and think, hey, I just need to try harder to not be like that guy, we're totally missing the point. The source material argues that if we rely on our own willpower, we're going to inevitably fail. We are all prone to editing the rules to suit ourselves. That's why the core message ultimately points us away from human effort and directly to the gospel. The solution isn't just better willpower, it's a better king. Unlike Saul, who selfishly edited the word to save his own image, his pride, and his bottom line, the text points to Jesus Christ as the true king. Jesus listened to the Father's voice perfectly, right to the very end. Even in his darkest moments, facing the cross, his master volume was locked completely onto the Father's will. He willingly sacrificed himself to save us, obeying completely on our behalf, where we, and leaders exactly like Saul, constantly fail.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. Which voice is currently controlling the master volume of your life? Is it the fear of what others think? Is it your own desire for comfort and profit? Or is it the true king? Take a moment today to check your heart's audio mixer. Thank you so much for joining me as we explored this powerful text.